Welcome to the 29th episode of Concussion Chats. My name is Taya. Concussion Chats is a podcast hosted by the McGill Students for the Concussion Legacy Foundation with the help of Nick from Concussion Talk podcast. We're dedicated to providing strength and hope to those recovering from concussions through sharing experiences. Today, we have a recording of our guest speaker, Katrina. So Katrina is an athlete and entrepreneur. She's been playing competitive hockey for 25 years and had no known concussions until a severe hit from behind playing hockey in March 2019. She didn't know she was concussed until 10 days later, and things spiraled from there with her body starting to shut down. She had to relearn how to walk and talk. Katrina credits Ottawa Performance Care for giving her life back. She's 90% healed now and wants to bring awareness. She now lives life in a slower, more calculated and present lane. She's really grateful for her family, friends, and strangers, and believes that you can heal and just take it one day at a time.
Thank you so much. First off, so everyone in here has had a concussion or is involved some way in concussions? Yeah. Well, not cool, but I feel ya. I had never known concussions were so devastating, and I played competitive hockey for 25 years. Never once had, what we call the concussion discussion in regards to if this happens, look out for your teammate, friend, whatever. So I don't know how much detail you want on the actual injury per se, or more so what happened after, but yeah, how much detail would you like me to go into things?
It's kind of up to you, Kat. Sorry, I forgot to say this before, but you have about 25 minutes. And, if you're feeling like talking about some detail, that's fine. I know a lot of us are at least a few months, a lot of us a few years out. So definitely talk about that afterwards as well. But hearing your story is always good for us to relate. So.
Well, I'll give you like a nutshell, and then we'll go from there. And if you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to ask them as we go, if that's works with your flow of things normally. But yeah, essentially, I was in a competitive final game, and I got hit from behind, slammed to the ice, and that was basically vertical, and then all of a sudden horizontal. So big whiplash, head went back, just instantly, like headache, obviously not feeling so good, and mostly sore with the whiplash, actually distracted by that. I wasn't even thinking about my head. And yeah, I didn't know that I was concussed. I even played one more shift and was like Bambi on ice all over the place. And then my coach was like, yeah, you're done, sit down. So unfortunately, my team, my trainer, no one really knew until 10 days later, So yeah, between the hit and 10 days later, I did everything you could possibly do wrong while in a concussed state, so to speak. I lifted weights. I went online, and I was like working on a website at the time. I went to a play at the NAC, which was really, really nice. But at the same time, that's when I started. It was like, I can't focus. Like, what is happening in this storyline? Like, I couldn't really see the characters on stage very well. It was kind of like blurry a little bit. And that was like 4 days later, maybe. I don't know if you guys have had this too, where your symptoms just show up later, kind of trickling, getting worse, or if it was like all of a sudden for you. A little bit of both. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it was about 3-4 days later that things started to get kind of loud and bright and trouble focusing. People would repeat things and it would just kind of like zone out. And then, yeah, 10 days afterwards, my body just like shut down and was like, nope, you need to rest. My brain is injured, and I got like the worst headache. I never get headaches. Like prior to this concussion, I don't know about you guys, if you had headaches before or not. I mean, who knows? Maybe I had what were called like subconcussive, hits beforehand in sports, maybe. But the headache at the time was like nothing I had ever experienced. And then there was this constant pressure as well. I don't know if you guys felt that or anything like that as well, but just like my head was like being squished. And the only thing that made it feel better was like actually holding it versus, it kind of felt like it was squished, but at the same time might float away. is a weird sensation. So went to the doctor. Obviously, they're like, wow, you're concussed. You need to like go home, chill, dark room, all that kind of feedback that I have now learned is possibly, out of date. And there are newer, more up-to-date technologies, I guess, or strategies for concussion care, which I ultimately found out. But yeah, my general doctor said, yeah, go home, rest for 2 weeks. So I did. And this was about April 2 years ago. And hello, everyone. New people coming in. This was about 2 years ago, April. I was on kind of sick leave for 2 weeks. I'm also self-employed. So I was like, well, how am I going to work / run my business and heal all at the same time? But luckily I have crew members and teammates that were able to kind of take the reins and let me heal a little bit. But the concussion really started to spiral 10 days after. I didn't realize it at the time, but there was definitely a lot of depressive thoughts coming in and like spiraling and like replaying of the hit and the injury. I don't know if you guys had similar like traumatic replay of whatever may have happened, but ultimately psychotherapy stuff helped with that in our case here. Yeah, lost where I was going with that one. Yeah, it happens. Where were we in the story, the update? Brain recall is much better. Still have moments of like the thought flutters away, but getting better at bringing it back. There's always been an element of that though, for sure. I don't know if anyone in here has like ADHD or focusing issues, but who knows if that was an underlying factor to the concussion or not. But yeah, so essentially hit in March of 2019. 10 days later, things spiraled. Sick leave for 2 weeks, filling out insurance papers, what happened, blah, 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 dealing with Hockey Canada. And then it was about end of April, May, that my body just like shut down to another whole level where my body actually froze. Like I was just eating breakfast one morning. And again, everything was really loud and really bright. I was eating breakfast. And then all of a sudden, like my hand was not coming to my face. And I was like, why is my arm not moving? And then I literally froze like a bad Zoom call connection. I was like, but yeah, I couldn't move. So, and I actually do, have some training and knowledge and, personal training and some somatic experience in therapy. So at some level, I knew my body was still in a very traumatic state and like shocked state from back in injury. But yeah, I just was like, oh my God, I think my nervous system just shut down and froze, and went to the hospital. And although the hospital the intention is to help, and I appreciate that, the environment was not supportive to concussion. And I'm sure many of you have gone to the hospital and experienced the loud, bright, very volatile environment that it is, and possibly made your symptoms worse as is. But yeah, the hospital, all the testing, MRIs came back clean, nothing's wrong. CT scans, CT scans, yeah, nothing wrong there. So I didn't know this, but yeah, concussions like don't show up on tests, right? So then you're not like something is off, but you have no way of like proving it or showing like, yeah, this is what happened. So I was getting frustrated, right? Like no one is actually finding out what happened. How did the concussion escalate to the point where my body is like temporarily paralyzed type of thing? And then fast forward like 7-10 days, and all of the testing and the bright, loud, all that stuff really just kind of triggered even more symptoms. And then all of a sudden I developed like a stutter and speech impediment. What else? It was bad. It was bad. Anytime I would look into bright lights, my body would like freeze. If it was a loud sound, I would like twitch. involuntarily. So I don't know if you guys have had either smaller scales of this or like much similar or much larger examples, but the neurologist ultimately said, like, you may have a concussion, but what's really going on here is you have something called FND, functional neurological disorder. I don't know if you've heard of this, but at the time I thought he was just trying to tell me that I was like crazy and that it was all in my head, and I was pretty pissed to be honest. I didn't fully understand until later what he was actually trying to say. And although I appreciate the time he spent with me in trying to assess and analyze, the way he was delivered in the bedside manner was so brutal. It just kind of shut me down to actually hearing what he was saying. And it was only until later where I found a different doctor who was like, yeah, a concussion is like a form of FND, like your brain, the way it functions is altered, and it needs to be supported in a way to go back to operating the way it used to, or in a way that it can, hear things and see things and not be overwhelmed by all the sensory input that's coming into it. So I was like, okay, what the heck is this concussion FND thing, and how do you heal from it, right? Like, he was kind of alluding to the fact that this could be the way I am from now on, And that was a pretty scary thing because I had gone from being completely independent. I live on my own, running my own business, playing high-level sports, to now having to move back into my mom's house and being taken care of, like needing help to have baths and showers and make my food, because you just have no energy in your brain to do anything. And so learning that over time that energy gets better was, that's been interesting to see, the neurofatigue. I don't know if you guys have that too, or if it still lingers, or if it goes kind of some days are better, some days are worse, but yeah, I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Yeah. So that was a big learning curve, is dealing with like not being able to do things you used to be able to do, right? And then having to get other people to do it. But the real tricky part too is with the brain injury is like, you're not able to communicate necessarily what you want or need. You're like an infant almost entrapped in an adult body that needs something, but you're not quite sure how to say it or get it or do it or even what you need. You just know you don't need this, you don't need that, you don't need XYZ. Yeah. So basically, I struggled in that state of temporary paralysis, like twitches, stutters, constant headaches and pressure. I was very sensitive to the barometric pressure changes. Like every time it would get thunderstormy and rainy, I would literally feel like a little squished ant. Just, I have to lay down, like all the energy is gone. And during this whole time, there was something in me that was like, I need to document this and like just put it out there. It's not the most flattering. I don't really, it's a pretty vulnerable state that I was in, but I was like, I have no idea what is going on, how I can heal from this, who can help me. The neurologist is saying, it's in your head, you need to go to talk therapy, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to heal from this. So then I'm like, oh shit, like, oh, sorry. I'm like, oh damn, how am I gonna heal from this? And then, so I just kept putting it out there on Facebook videos, and I'm like, someone must see this, someone must have come across it. Like, we're in 2020. At the time it was 2019. There's got to be someone that has dealt with this. And so thank you, Concussion Montreal, for hosting things like this, to be honest, that bring concussion groups together and let us talk and learn from each other, because it really will, I think you learning from each other's experiences will lead you to a better result potentially than just trying to listen to someone else's telling you what to do. But you can take from this what you want, you can leave from it what you want. And at the end of the day, if anyone feels a little bit better from this or has a piece of experience that resonates with them, then that makes me feel better that I could help in some way from my shared experience, or I can learn from you as well on what what went well for you or what didn't go well for you. But yeah, so from the concussion to 6 months of like just really suffering, trying massage therapy, chiropractic, I tried vision care, eye therapy. But the issue was, you guys have probably heard something like this, the cup, when your cup is so full and you're like, you have to go to therapy, which is work, which adds more water into your cup, and then you're just overflowing. And you're like, I want to heal, I want to put in the work, but my cup is just overflowing. And then by the time you get to your session, you do the work, now you're just done for like however many days. Yeah. So it wasn't until I found a therapist through a friend. He's actually a chiropractor. And basically my friend Etienne, he reached out to me. He's like, Kat, I've seen your social media posts for the last 6 months. It breaks my heart that you're struggling. I have a friend who works in concussions. He's a chiropractor that specializes in concussion care, and he uses treatment-based therapies from functional neurology. And I'm like, I don't understand what you just said. I heard something that like you can help, and sure, I'm open to it. Like, what's up? So essentially my friend, he called me and was like, okay, I'm coming to get you. I'm going to take you to this guy. We're going to do an intensive rehab and hopefully reset you onto a good path. And I was like, at the time, I felt like I tried everything, right? 6 months feels like a lifetime when you're struggling. And if your life is completely different from what it used to be, that 6 months can feel like a lot longer. So I'm like, okay, let's go do it. Whatever it is, let's make it happen. And I walked into the Ottawa Performance Care Clinic, OPC. I think it was middle September 2019. And I walked in with a stutter. I walked in massive headache, pressure all the time, temporary paralysis, depending on like how light and bright it was. It was very, very much a correlation with the brighter and louder it was, the less able I was to function. So at OPC, they basically in 8 days healed me, which sounds ridiculous, but is the truth. I walked out of there like this, being able to talk normally, being able to walk and even run. I am able to work now. I have days where obviously the energy level is still higher or lower from the neuro fatigue and weather fluctuations, as I'm sure some of you guys do as well. But I try to do well with nutrition because I understand that there's a huge impact, obviously, with your internal inflammation systems and all that. However, obviously, like everyone, we all have our things that we like, and I don't really drink or anything like that, but I am very much addicted to sugar and love candy. So that's been a struggle, is knowing that causes inflammation and, sensitivity. So trying to balance all that. But back to the therapy at OPC, I don't really know what else to say in it other than he was a chiropractor and he specialized in concussion care treatment using functional neurology. And my understanding of it is basically he addressed my energy level. So like I was on a strict, very clean eating for 8 days. There was no sugar being had. It was only like fruits, vegetables, protein, no dairy even. It was very, very strict. But at the same time, I started to feel so much better. And I was on curcumin supplements, anti-inflammatories. Hopefully you guys have had these. A glutathione as well, a massive anti-inflammatory. And those made a huge difference. Like that hot burning pressure in my head started to lessen. And I was like, okay, he's on to something here. And it was almost like by shifting the diet right away, that created a better ecosystem internally for my body to be able to have a little more space in its cup, right, to go to the therapy. Because prior to that, I was just eating like tidbits or whatever. I felt like crap. So when you feel like crap, you want to eat like crap, right? It's a catch-22 situation. What you know and what you feel don't always line up. So he was like, we're going to do this, but first we have to change the internal system and support it. So then you have more energy to do your treatment and then see some success. And the treatments were mind blowing. Like he had like electrodes like plugged on, like re-patterned my ability to walk. We did like marching, and it was 8 days in a row, 2 times a day. The morning session, then I would nap and rest and eat, and then the evening session, and then repeat. And you know, there was a miracle in there as well. I guess I'm just so grateful. But because we were documenting the whole thing and sharing it, what I love most is not only did my friend reach out to me and really save my life and lead me to this place, but we documented it all, and we can share it now with other people who hopefully can find this place or other places like it and see success and start to find healing in a more speedy way versus suffering for so long. Because the 6 months of treatment that I was doing was very superficial, like make you feel better for a day and then like worse for 2, you know, 1 step forward, 2 step back. I don't know if you guys have had that as well, but it's very frustrating, and you start to lose hope and you get kind of discouraged. Like, why am I, you know, is anyone like actually going to help? So although it's frustrating, like if you can share your story or feel comfortable sharing bits of it, you never know who else it could help out, or who else might see it and reach out and be like, I know someone who can help you. And yeah, sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't. I did do a different therapy, and it was like a vision therapy, and it was not for me. So I understand that not all therapies are for everyone, but I think if you can be open to, you know, different types of therapies and kind of feel what feels right for you, and then go with that. But yeah, and then here I am today. It's almost been 2 years now, and basically back to work minus COVID restrictions, and starting to work out at home a little bit and get back into movement. I'm obviously not playing any competitive hockey ever again, unfortunately, but I still skate. I love skating. So yeah, I think that's kind of the gist of the story.
Today I have Emily, who is also part of McGill Students for Concussion Legacy Foundation, and Nick from Concussion Talk podcast joining me. Katrina's story really, it was a really good story, but also just like how she got her concussion just kind of reminded me of like my first that like I knew about, because it was like hockey, and like an unfair hit. Like I was on like
same thing, like same hit from behind.
No, like the girl had like tripped me. I was like on my knees trying to get back up, but I was also trying to get the puck out of like our end zone. And then she like took her hockey stick and just like smash over the top of my head, like right down the center. Yeah, it was messed up.
That's messed up.
I got the penalty for slashing her. When I was on the ground, I slashed her and I got the penalty. But and then like she said, like she played another shift, like I finished up the game because no one like saw that I got hit or anything. But yeah, no, just like the unfair hit just kind of like reminded me of my own. But her share was really, really good. I remember when like she first got concussed. Actually, I don't know how I found her on Instagram. It was when I first took over the concussion support group. And I saw like the beginning of like her recovery, and it was really cool to just like listen to the recording because I wasn't at the meeting, listen to the recording and just like hear the difference, because I used to watch like her videos and she would always kind of post.
First video, was that her running down the street? I think maybe.
No, I was just talking about like ones about like she would kind of post like her progress, like the things, like she'd be like talking and like she had a really bad stutter for a while, and she would post videos about like just like her recovery and stuff on Instagram. So it was really cool to like, because I'd kind of forgotten about like that, like I was like keeping up with it for a while, and like, and then when I heard her share, I was like, oh my God, like that's like who I was thinking. And I remember when I first found her, I was thinking like, oh, she'd be really cool, like talk to a support group at some point, like that'd be cool. And then like a couple years later, that was cool.
Yeah. It's very, I get a lot of hope to like her, and if her talk was like, get better if you just like, let's say the message is obvious, but I didn't even say that. But she's actually, you hear that she was actually hopeful about what's going on with her life, and how it's not all like just, oh, my life is ruined now. It's so hard now. It was more of it's more positive, which is nice to hear.
Mm-hmm. While still touching on like the really negative stuff too, you know, like she did say like she was like spiraling and having like depressive thoughts, and like she did touch on all the really hard parts, but she never I
thought it was interesting how she was like, and when I look back, I was definitely having depressive thoughts, and how in the moment she didn't really register that, and how common that is. I had this similar thing where I think I've talked about it before, is like I got hit and that's all I knew was that body that I was in and that brain that I was in. And so it was like I too was having really, really depressive thoughts for quite a few years, and it didn't register as that for quite some time. Like it was just like, oh, this is what life is. Like this is how we do life, kind of just as a zombie that is a little bit unsatisfied, and that is life. And then I think back to being a little kid, which I couldn't really remember, you know, what that was like at the time. I was like, man, I was always just like a pretty jolly little human. And I just, all of that was, you know, missing for a very long time.
Did she talk about her treatment for depression or for any mental?
No, yeah, she mentioned CBT therapy, or she mentioned psychotherapy.
But what I was going to say, just like on top of what Emily was saying, it's just like, I'd never really thought about that, and how when my depression really hit was around times where I definitely did get hit in the head. And I probably did have concussions. And I'd never thought about how, like, I wasn't a super depressed kid growing up or anything, but then all of a sudden, I was very depressed, and have been dealing with that stuff for a really long time. And I never thought about it being a concussion thing. And another thing we've just been talking about a lot lately with the support group is just like how hard it is to manage and like address emotions when you're concussed, because your brain's not in the best place and it's not working at 100%, and you have all these emotions but you just can't make sense of them. Just how difficult it can be.
Yeah, maybe a bit of a defensive mechanism too, because like I never even thought about being like, I had like obviously very bad thoughts and sad thoughts about myself and stuff, but I never, I'm thinking my mic is, how does that make sound? Does it sound okay?
Yep.
Good. Yeah, and but it's not really, doctors or people ask me, do you ever feel like depressed or bothered? Like, no, I've no, I felt bad a lot of times, but this was just after an accident. But after listening, after the past, like, well, it gets more like 5 years, or 5 years since starting the podcast, hear more people talk about how they're depressed and stuff, and how the your group talks a lot about emotions and stuff. But after a concussion and feeling depressed or feeling anxious or worrying or whatever, so same difference, but almost, well, not really, but anyway. But it's just good to get other people's takes on it and how it's, and you recognize that maybe you were going through some stuff you didn't want to, didn't want to say or didn't know, so you didn't say. Like, I guess also with times when I was brain injured, I was obviously it was a more acute situation, but there's also a like long not a long time ago, but it was 18 years ago in August, and so a lot has changed since then. But yeah, but it's good to hear other people to get a fuller sense of what you may have been going through yourself. If you don't recognize the time, it's just knowing that maybe it was depressive thoughts, maybe it was that makes you feel more normal now than
the reflection, like being able to like reflect on that is super cool for sure.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about all the times that I like was in doctor's offices and they were like, "Are you depressed or anxious?" And I was like, "No." And I look back and I'm like, "Yeah, I was. I was very."
Like being concussed, like your emotions are all out of whack, and also like you probably didn't know the full extent of what being depressed and anxious was either, because for a long time I wouldn't say I was depressed, or like I didn't think of myself as like depressed or someone like that had anxiety or anything, but like, man, I definitely had anxiety as a kid. I was such an anxious kid, like, oh my gosh. But I never, like, that wasn't something that like I knew. So if someone were to ask me, wouldn't know. And then throw on like a concussion and, well, you're really not gonna know.
Yeah, nothing just and I was I was thinking about how weird it would be, like when she's talking about being like paralyzed or twitching, and how I've had these moments in my life where I've been like, all right, move.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, like,
you're concrete.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's like in a good chunk of my brain, everything makes perfect sense, but I cannot get that to the part of my brain that needs to do the action or say the words or form the thoughts. But I'm like, there's this very, very sane, coherent part of me that was there that could not express itself, like was fully just trapped. And that's some of her talk reminded me of that sort of process. It's so frustrating because I'm like, I promise I'm not stupid.
Yes, like you know that you can do it. It's just,
but I can't.
You can't in the moment. Like you just can't do it, even though like you know you can do it. You know what it is, and
how.
That's so frustrating. Yeah, you know what it is. You know how. You know exactly like every single thing, but like you just can't do it, and like that's so frustrating because then it's just like I look stupid, but I'm not. I just can't right now.
I always think about decision making. Like Taya, it's so funny now that we look back at like me when I would have quote unquote narcolepsy attacks, which now at this point probably some were narcolepsy and some were concussion because I just didn't realize I was still dealing with cognitive deficits or neurodeficits. But in part of my brain, I would be like, yes, I'm about to fall asleep. The task is to go lay down. And I couldn't make that decision half the time. Taya would be like, go to bed. And I'd be like, go to bed.
Yeah, it would be like me like telling her like, Emily, this is what you're going to do. Or like or even just like when we'd be studying and like clearly you need to take a nap, clearly you need to go home, and you're like, no, like I'm fine. And I'm like, Emily, half your face is paralyzed, you look like absolute shit, like you need to go to sleep, like, you're not gonna do anything. And you just be like, no, like I'm fine. And then after enough like of me being like, no, this is what you're gonna do, then like eventually happens, kind of thing.
But it's like, I think, and part of it is like this like mindset of go, but I think part of it is also this not registering what's actually happening in the part of the brain that needs to know what is actually happening right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And she also talked about just like how like one of the doctors that she saw like basically alluded that like she was going to be the way she was from like now on, and just like how I just thought about how so many people in the group have had so many doctors say that, and like we've talked about it so many times about how like it's not you, like it's just like the doctor doesn't know what to do. It's like it's a them problem, not a you problem, and there's nothing wrong with you, and you will definitely, like, you just need to be seeing someone else. And
well, that does also bring up kind of the acceptance, like this is your life now, and this accept that it's going to be. So I know what they're doing. They're kind of it's easier, better if you accept your life than someone else telling you this.
Yeah, that's what a doctor's saying, is just like, yeah, like you just need to accept this, like this is how it's going to be, when in reality it's like, no, you need to accept that you don't have the tools and skills and knowledge to help me, so you need to refer me to someone that can help me. And I think that's a big ego problem with doctors. They just can't do that. But even just like going back to like what we were just talking about, like with decisions and stuff, like she was talking about how like she felt like an infant in like an adult body, because like you know, like you can't get what you need, but you know you don't need blah blah blah, but like you just can't do it yourself, kind of thing. And I think that sums it up pretty good.
I really liked that expression.
It was a good one for sure. In my notes I found that she said like psychotherapy really helped with her traumatic replays, because she said like she just kept like replaying the hit, and I still do that sometimes with like my hit over the head, or even just like some injuries, but yeah, that stuff's traumatizing. But yeah,
overall I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like that. Again, I like the hopefulness was away from it, was that she was hopeful at the end, at least, and she was simply through, but really at the end she expressed her hopefulness, which I think is important for people to hear. How just being concussion, they kind of get all like, oh, you know, this is the worst thing ever, and I'm going to be like this, and this is life sucks and all stuff. But
which of course I'm sure she had days like that. Of course she did, but she chose to
patience and just,
you know, she didn't just like fall into that trap kind of thing. She like worked as hard as she could to. Also, I think it's really cool that like she documented the entire thing. Like, if you go on her Instagram, like you can scroll all the way back and you can watch and see like her recovery process. I actually did it after listening to the recording. I went through and I was like, holy shit, like that's awesome. It was super cool. Her talk was really good.
Yeah, I think we keep hearing more and more about those chiropractors, don't we?
Yeah.
Those functional chiropractors or functional neurologists. I'm hoping, 10, 20 years down the road, it's going to be a little bit more of a known. It'd be nice if it was tomorrow, but let's,
But you know how it works. Yeah. Hopefully it'll go along. Also, I think so in her bio, it said she spent 8 months going to OPC 2 times a day, but then in her talk, she was saying 8 days. So I wasn't sure if it was probably months, right?
I think she might have done 8 days of like very intensive, I feel like.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyways, I'm sure if people go creep out
DM her.
Yeah, or if people go creep her Instagram, you'll find it.
Figure it out.
But it was really great to just hear all about her recovery, and I just really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's good. And now she's a concussion advocate herself, and she has and Instagram. And yeah, so it's awesome that more people are advocating for concussions and stuff. But, yeah, so thanks Nick for helping us do the podcast. Thanks Katrina for joining the support group and sharing your story. And thanks for coming and being here. We'll have a new podcast posted Monday morning. Our upcoming podcast can be found on concussiontalk.com, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can find more information about our group on concussionmtl.com. Our free peer-to-peer support group is open to everyone, and we hold 4 weekly Zoom meetings. We're always looking for Thursday morning speakers. Thanks for listening. HeadCheck Health bridges gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Trek Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.